What's going on, everybody? David here, back with another video. So we're going to do a stimulus package, stimulus check update. And the number one question I get asked in the comments is, who is going to qualify for this next stimulus check? Because they're talking about the qualification levels. They might change it. And the answer is, I don't know. And no one knows at this point. So we've heard different numbers thrown out there, 50,000 or less, and all this different stuff. And so that question was asked of Treasury Secretary Yellen earlier today, and I want to show you her response, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please hit the like button. It does help with the YouTube algorithm. Also, please subscribe to the channel. Hit that little bell notification. That way you'll get notified anytime we put out a video. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look and listen to Treasury Secretary Yellen as she explains when she thinks, or who she thinks qualifies for this next stimulus check. Here we go.
Now, in this current rescue package, what should determine who is eligible for a stimulus check? Should it be your 2019 income level or your unemployment status?
Well, you know, President Biden wants to make sure that the payments that he's proposed, $1,400 payments to make good on the total $2,000 pledge, goes to families that really need it, that are struggling. And of course, it shouldn't go to very well-off families that don't need the funds and haven't been hard hit by the crisis. So he's discussing the appropriate cutoffs and phase-ins with members of Congress, and is open to negotiating on those. But there are a lot of families that are struggling with lower income and need those payments.
Okay, now that answer, she still didn't explain as far as, is it 50,000 or less? And I don't think she's going to be able to explain that because no one knows at this point. Like I said, people are just throwing numbers out. But the unfortunate part is that, let's say it is 50,000 or less. Well, you do have people that are making 75,000 that are struggling, or you have maybe a head of household. Let's say it's 100,000, so they make the cap at 100,000. Head of households making 100,000, and the family is still struggling. So I think this is just looking at how much money people are making. I think that's kind of a bad way to go about it. And I think what they should be doing is maybe have people show, okay, you know what, these are my losses due to COVID-19, and maybe medical bills and things like that. So you could qualify in different ways. So it's not just the income, it's other things. So that's the only thing that I see. I mean, it's easy to say, okay, we're just going to do it this way. It's quicker for us to just say a limit as far as how much money you make per year. But I don't know. I don't really know if that's a good way to go about it. And plus, if you're looking at the 2019 taxes, well, guess what? A lot of people in 2020 were working and everything was going well, and then they lost their job. And so now they're in a situation where they didn't make that 75,000 or more in 2020. But if they're not going to be looking at the 2020 taxes and they're looking at 2019 taxes, well, you have people that might have been making more than 75,000 at that time before COVID-19. So it's going to be tough. We have to figure out how they're going to do this thing, but I don't know if making changes now is going to be the appropriate way to handle this.
You know, sending people checks in the mail, though, the criticism is that this is more about politics than economics. Some of your fellow economists have been very critical. Stanford's John Cogan claims 70% of stimulus payments from last year were either saved or used to pay debt. Mark Zandi of Moody's, who the president often references, said stimulus checks are not the most effective type of support, and said much of it goes to households that don't need the funds. Given that, how do you justify writing these checks?
Well, it has to go to people and households that do need the money, and those are lower income households. And we need to make sure that the cutoffs are appropriate so that households that are doing really well maybe have seen their stock portfolios rise and make a lot of income and haven't lost their jobs. Those households shouldn't be getting it.
What's your floor and ceiling on that?
There is a lot more targeted relief also. Well, I don't have specifics for you today. These are matters that President Biden is discussing with members of Congress and is open to reviewing what's appropriate. But he is committed to providing the $1,400 payments to those who qualify.
But there's no jobs creation program in here. The president says he wants that massive infrastructure bill to be next. And job creation is what we need to see. Don't you risk spending your political capital now when you need to create jobs in this next bill?
Well, there will be another bill that addresses job creation through infrastructure development, through investment in people, in education and training, addresses climate change, improves the competitiveness of our economy, and is designed to create good jobs with good pay that involve careers for people. But right now, this package will do a huge amount to create jobs. The spending it will generate is going to lead to demand for workers, help put people back to work, especially when we can get vaccinations and the public health situation to the point where the economy can begin to open up again.
Okay, so that was Treasury Secretary Yellen. And they went on and started talking about GameStop. And so I don't want to go into that. But when it comes down to it, when we were looking at this whole situation, I just think, and Mark Cuban said this best, and he said this a few months ago, if you really want to stimulate the economy, then you put a timetable on the money that you're sending out. So they could do the debit card and not allow people to take money off the debit card. You have to go and spend it somewhere, and give them a certain amount of time that the money needs to be spent. And if it's not spent, well, then they're going to lose the money. That's the smart way to do it. That stimulates the economy. So you don't have to do these caps. You don't have to do the 75,000 or less, or you don't have to do that. Because if you're afraid that people who aren't going to use it, if you think they're going to put it in their savings, you give them a situation where they have to spend the money in a certain amount of time. And so there are ways around this. And ultimately, what this is for is to help people who really need it, but it's also to stimulate the economy, because stimulating the economy is going to help these businesses, these small businesses that need people to go into their shops and purchase their products. So that's another thing that we're not thinking about. Yes, if you give it to families that really need it, yes, they're going to pay their bills and all that. But what about going to the restaurants? What about going to some of these other places? So I don't know. I don't know if this is the right way to go. I think leave it at the same, at the very, very least that you should do is leave it at the same rate that it is now. Now, I understand, because the formula will allow people who are making more and allow them to get stimulus checks when they weren't able to get stimulus checks in the past. I don't agree with that. I think you should keep it at the same level that it is now, but don't increase it. So we'll just have to see how they handle this whole thing, but it's going to be a real tricky thing to do, because you're looking at a situation where just because someone's making $75,000 or more doesn't mean that they did really well last year. It doesn't mean that. So I want to know what you guys think about this. So in the comment section, let me know down below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye.